No takers, I guess. Russell Enyart, what is up? The man, the myth, the legend. Russell's driving, but not making any progress on the Golden Gate Bridge. I hate that. What's up, Russell? How are you, man?
Just excited about our Nakoma event. Starts this afternoon.
Where are you going?
All of the leaders put together a Nakoma production attraction event.
Nice.
Starts this afternoon at 4, so it should be a good time.
That's exciting. Good. Nice to see you. Anybody else want to put their camera on? We greatly appreciate it. Be awesome, so that way I can talk to you instead of all of your names. But either way, we can get started. I'm Wally Bressler. I've done these calls before with Tom. He asked me to kind of help out today, and what he wanted me to talk about was overcoming fears. We're in a market now where it's a little crazy. I mean, this isn't quite as crazy as the Great Recession, but it's not exactly the easiest thing to get through. And when especially if you got in the market in the last 5 years, you're mostly bowled over by this. And if you got in the market since 2013, you may be somewhat bowled over by this. Interestingly enough, about a third of the realtors that are in the market today, which is right about 1.559 million, I got in the business between 2013 and now, and 121,000 of them got in the market between 2020 and 2022. So lots of folks have not seen what we're going through right now. Combination of higher interest rates and higher prices. I was just kind of frame things out a little bit more. Mid-July, the median price of a home across the country was the highest it had ever been at $406,700, and interest rates got up in August at 7.35%. So it's a tough combination for affordability, and as a result of that, we are going to see fewer homes sold. And just to give you some perspective, Statistia, who is it's an organization that tracks all kinds of data from all kinds of industries. It's connected with CoreLogic and some other organizations. They're thinking we're going to end the year somewhere around 5.1, 5.2 million homes sold, which puts us back to like 2000, 12, 13 numbers. And the thing is back in 2012, there were 1.04 million realtors in the country. Okay, now we're going to sell the same number of homes, and there's almost 1.6 million realtors. So you can imagine, same size pie, a lot more people vying for the pie. You're going to have to get on the phone. You're going to have to build relationships. You're going to have to be super consistent and persistent to convert a lead. Here's the other thing, just tracking numbers for some of the larger teams that I work with. And I saw a success manager for Ylopo speak the other day at an event I was speaking at. She said that their numbers for the people that they're tracking for some larger teams are somewhere between 22 and 26 contact attempts to get in front of somebody. Okay. So if you're unable to pick up the phone, if you're unable to call people consistently, if you're unable to call people, if you can't advance a call, which means if you're one of the 44% of people who bail at the first objection, you're gonna have a tough time, surviving in this market and getting into the next market. Russell, were you in the market during the Great Recession?
No.
You weren't in the business back then? Okay.
No.
Anybody here in the market back then? It was tough because there were so many houses for sale and so few people that were out there buying homes. And so you had to be the one who was like a puppy on a sock and stayed on top of people. But if you can't manage your emotions and get in front of people, then it's kind of a tough thing. So I'm going to spend a little time just kind of talking about fear and why it happens and what you can do to overcome it, because everybody has fears. People ask me what's the difference between a successful agent and an unsuccessful agent, and really what it boils down to is that a successful agent does what they're supposed to do. They do the things that other people don't want to do, and they push through the fear to make it happen. I'll say that again. They do things that they have to do the things they don't want to do, and they push through the fear to make it happen, right? So there's all kinds of things that are fraught with fear. And Russell Enyart, super successful guy, has some sideline businesses that he's working, doing a job recruiting, but you're not telling me that you're never worried about making a decision, right? You're not telling me that there aren't things that haven't caused fear in the past for you recently, right? In the past year or two. Yes.
No, it's a pain in the butt every day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, you wake up every day, you're like, hey, You have daughters, correct? Don't you have a daughter or two or something like that, if I recall correctly?
I got 2 daughters, 2 sons.
Yeah, so I've got 3 daughters and a son. So I get it. So you have to provide for them. So the fear can be overwhelming sometimes. So here's the deal: we're born with a negativity bias, okay? And basically, that negativity bias is there to keep us from getting killed, doing dumb stuff. Okay, so we are naturally programmed for negative things, to look for negative things. Does that make sense? It's how we're wired. It's a gift. As part of that process, you've probably heard of the reticular activator, which is basically your mind's eye. Essentially, God gave that to animals, human beings included, so that we could identify our predators. Okay, now, granted, humans in general don't have a predator per se. We are predators in many cases, but fact of the matter is that that reticular activator there is there to help us protect ourselves, and it also works to help us identify things that are on our mind, right? You're thinking about buying a new car, you want to buy, a caddy, all of a sudden you start seeing caddies, or you're pregnant, your wife's pregnant, pardon me, you're pregnant, I'm sorry, your wife's pregnant or you're pregnant, and you start seeing babies, pregnant women, baby carriages. That's just your reticular activator, okay? But what happens is that reticular activator is there really to protect you. And so the combination of this negativity bias and this particular activator can very easily put us in a position where we can let fear engage very quickly. Now, our brain has a conscious mind and an unconscious mind, subconscious mind. Subconscious mind does about 95% of the work. The conscious mind does about 5% of the work. So what that means is the largest part of what that works for you in your brain is the part of your brain that does not know the difference between what's real and what's fake. Okay? Anybody here afraid of snakes? Anybody have a fear of any animal that they've never seen or met before? Right? And it happens to a lot of people, right? Yeah, right. I mean, we all have it, right? I mean, like I've never gotten stuck in a tube or anything like that, but you go to water parks and they have that closed tube. That kind of wigs me out. I've never gotten stuck, but I'm like, this is weird, So the fact of the matter is our subconscious mind can identify a fear, and it can create that fear for us if we let it, even though we've never experienced it. The other thing is that if something happened to you when you were younger, right? Because we all have a fight, freeze, or flight mechanism. If something happened when you're younger that triggered that flight mechanism, or for that fight mechanism, especially flight, though, what happens is it's like planting a little seed. So let's just say you were bullied in school, okay? And bullying has proven to cause tremendous amount of mental health issues in children, because acceptance is a big thing when we're kids there, and we so want to be accepted and liked. I mean, we're always meant to be part of groups. That's why there were tribes were formed. The biblical representation is God wants us to form and pray and honor Him in group. I mean, we're supposed to be in groups. That's how we were created. But when we're in groups and we're not accepted, that really works against us. But so when we get bullied, it really causes emotional pain. It causes mental pain. It causes self-esteem issues. And even if you're just bullied once, I have a client here in the Dallas area. He's also a good friend of mine, and great real estate agent. Beautiful woman. But when she was in 5th grade, she wore dress shoes to gym class, and the kids made fun of her mercilessly. And she grew up to be a huge perfectionist and would not leave the house unless she looked perfect. And she would spend money on hair extensions, and eyelashes and nails and skin treatments and teeth whitening and all the other stuff to make sure that she looked perfect. $5,000 purses, name brand cars and clothes. And so there's one problem with trying to be perfect, and what's that? Anyone? Kurt's trying to, there he is.
No such thing.
That's right, Kurt. I knew you were going to say it. That's why I waited. I could see it. We were simpatico. I felt it. Right, exactly. There's no such thing as perfect. Never, ever, ever. And perfectionism is nothing more than a fear-based strategy to protect ourselves, because we don't want people to feel like we are not good enough, right? Roughly 2/3 of all salespeople have a very strong need to be liked. Okay, and that need to be liked also basically presents itself as fear of rejection, fear of not being accepted, fear of not being wanted, fear of not being approved of, fear that we're bothering somebody. Does that make sense? So if you had anything happen in your childhood, if you were sexually abused, emotionally abused, physically abused, if you had a near-death experience, if somebody had a near-death experience, if somebody died in your presence or when you were younger, if you were bullied, okay, if you If you grew up poor, that's a big one. If your parents fought all the time, if your parents never fought, that's a big one. People whose parents never fought create a very unreal environment for their kids, because, you know, there is feedback in life. There are people who are not good at delivering things, and sometimes people need to tell you the truth, and it can be hurtful. And if your parents never fought and led you to believe that everything was all leave it to beaverish, then as soon as you get on the real world and somebody says, hey, I don't like what you did, or you didn't do a good job, that creates a tremendous amount of fear. Does that make sense? Okay, excuse me 1 second here. Say hello to Frank. Say hi, Frank. Sorry, rescued 2 kittens, and I've rescued them so well they're alive and well and terrorizing my place. So anyway, the whole point is like, this happens to us, and every time something happens that triggers that fear again, just strengthens that little seed, turns it into, grows that little seed. So it's a seed, then it's a seedling, then it's a plant, then it's a flower, then it's a little bush, then it's a big bush, then it's a tree, then it's a sequoia tree, and it's monstrous. And we don't even recognize the fear anymore. We just start avoiding things. We go into avoidance mode, right? Does that make sense? We just start avoiding things altogether because we just don't want to deal with the fear. And so what happens is, and T. Harv Eker calls it TFAR, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. We get a thought, we get triggered, and then there's an emotion that comes up, but we've gotten so good at that, dealing with that emotion, that we go right to the action or an inaction. So it's, and then we get a result that's sucky, but then it's thoughts, and let's skip the feeling, procrastination, thought, let's skip the feeling, perfectionism, thought, skip the feeling, drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, any avoidance strategy, spending hours on social media, you know, eating and doing something else, and then we don't get the result we want, and we don't even realize it. What we do is we call it, I don't want to bother people. It's too early, it's too late, they don't want what I need. All right, they're not going to want to talk to me. I'm not going to do a good job. I'm afraid of rejection. I don't want to get in front of a video camera to create, you know, what do you call it? Video for content. You know, and then we do the Mexican hat dance on everything we need to do to be successful. Okay. And so if you cannot or will not prospect consistently, if you'll not record videos for content, if you get off the phone at the first sign of resistance, if you don't make follow-up calls, you know, if you don't handle objections, if you can't negotiate your fee, or if you're afraid to ask for a commission, you know, if you're not consistent, by the way, that, or if you can't stick to your goals or to your calendar, or you don't go to the gym consistently, or you don't, you know, eat well all the time, that's all tied to the same thing. And then it's that fear that was triggered when you were a child between being born and 12 that is now evidencing itself as an avoidance strategy. Are you guys with me on that? Right? I mean, it's just the way it is. It's not your fault, because most likely you weren't the one that triggered that response. But you are responsible for actually making sure that it goes away. And unfortunately, it's not going to go away on its own. Okay. And, you know, no amount of training, no amount of scripts and dialogues, no amount of role play, no amount of anything is going to make it go away. You've got to do the work on it. Okay. And so the number one thing you can do to go ahead and overcome your fear is to address it. A lot of folks don't realize that there's a direct connection between something that happened when they were younger and their inability to, or unwillingness to do the things they need to do to be successful in life and in business. And so the first thing you need to do is you need to identify and become aware of what that fear is and where it comes from. Okay. Your subconscious mind remembers everything you've ever tasted, touched, smelled, heard, or seen. All 5 senses, it remembers every ounce of it, every second of it, and it stacks it all like this. But remember, your brain wants to keep you safe, it wants to keep you alive, right? And so it's going to go ahead and want you to resolve these things, but you're going to continue to push them down so you don't have to deal with the pain. But that's all in there, and that fear is residing in those experiences. And so what you need to do first and foremost is identify the source of these fears. And the best way that I've found to do it is to go ahead and to get a couple of note cards, or note cards, or to grab a piece of paper and cut it in half and just write down a very simple question. What is the source of my call reluctance, procrastination, perfectionism, avoidance strategy, fear of this, fear of that? Just write it down. What is the source of my, put it on, you can ask multiple questions. Why am I a perfectionist? Or what's causing me to be a perfectionist? What's causing me to be a procrastinator? Whatever it is, and put it on the card, and then spend time during the day with one of them. Put the other one on your nightstand and look at it before you go to bed. By the time you wake up tomorrow morning or the next morning, you're going to have your answer there. Okay. Now, I call that global awareness, right? You have to figure out where it's coming from. No matter what it is, it's not your fault. Okay, it happened when you were younger. Again, somebody triggered it or something. You made an observation, right? And then, oh, but the other thing, a lot of it comes from your parents too, if they were alcoholics or, if they were neglectful or they programmed you with some negativity. That all can contribute to this fear as well. Once you identify it, then you have to go ahead and do some work, and the part of that is acknowledging and recognizing when that fear comes up. Every emotion has a physiological response. Does that make sense? When you're happy, you feel it in your body. When you're sad, you feel it in your body. When you're angry, you feel it in your body. When you're at peace, you feel it in your body. The problem is we've gotten so good over time of numbing those feelings and escaping them and passing right by them. But if we can take 1 minute and sit down and let that emotion come up and feel it when it comes up and acknowledge these physiological responses, we can deal with it. So let me give you an example. I have, I dealt with anxiety, and still rears its ugly head sometimes, but I dealt with anxiety effectively since I was about 5 or 6 years old. I'm 55, so for 5 decades. And I was addicted to sex and pornography and food and money. I mean, I had a lot of bad choices and challenges in my life, and so I finally learned how to identify when something happens. So one of the things that happens when I get anxious, especially if I'm going to do something, and that old need for approval rears its ugly head, sometimes I'll start pushing my toes into the tops of my shoes, and that can make my feet burn. But I know as soon as that happens that something's going on. So as soon as that toe movement comes in, I'm like, okay, what's going on? What's happening here? And then my subconscious will tell me, hey, that's because of this. And then as soon as you feel it, you've got to work on becoming mindful. Okay, you've got to do some box breathing or do like some mindful meditation, like at the mindful movement on YouTube. But you've got to let that feeling come up, and then you've just got to process it and let it go. Right, here's the thing, like we think about the future, uncertainty, like fearful things can come up. We think about the past, anger, sadness, depression can come up. But if we think about what's going on right now and just focus on the now, none of that can come up. And here's the good news: through the power of neuroplasticity, which is basically your brain's ability to be restructured, rewired, plasticity remodeled, you can actually train your brain to not let the things that bother you bother you. Let me give you an example. So what's something that triggers anybody? Anybody here? Is there something that triggers you? As soon as you hear it and see it, you're like, phew. Anybody want to share anything? No? Okay, I'll share one. Oh, my man coming back for a second, helping. Kurt?
Rejection, actually.
Okay. Don't unmute, don't stay on mute. So, right, so we get triggered by rejection. Do you know where it comes from?
It comes from when I was younger.
Yep. What happened?
With my family.
Yeah, do you mind sharing?
A lot of it had to do with my parents and how they fought, and trying to kind of be the good kid to keep peace in the house.
Which never happened, right? No matter how good you
Yeah.
were, it happened. So, and then you also saw in your life when bad things happen, people fight and it gets ugly and it gets bad. So why am I going to pick the phone up and call somebody when I remember when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, my parents did that, right? Makes complete sense, right? And so, and thank you for being vulnerable and caring. I appreciate that. So because your subconscious mind doesn't know whether it's today or 30, 40, 50 years ago, whatever it is, your brain, as soon as something comes up today that triggers it, which is like getting on the phone and facing the fear of rejection, your brain goes all the way back to that experience and treats it the same way as it treated it that many years ago. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, it's good that you recognize that now. What we need to do is when that fear of rejection comes up, which happens long before you get on the phone, you've got to go, okay, and here's the thing, like you get the lightheadedness, you get the upset stomach, you get the sweaty palms, the sweaty pits. It's because your body's going into fight or flight mode, right? Shuts down your salivary glands, turns off your digestive system, increases your heart rate, increases your lung capacity. That's why you start feeling lightheaded and like you got to go, like your stomach is killing you, because your body's basically preparing for you to either take off or fight. And so when that feeling comes up, the only way you can get out of it is just to do some breathing exercises, either some box breathing, which is in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, out for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4. Okay. So if you start doing that, when you start feeling anxious and getting on the phone, that'll start helping you. The other thing you need to do, though, is you need to rewire your brain a little bit. I'm a big fan of Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. You familiar with it?
No.
Okay, it's a great book. There it is. And so, hold on. Come on. Okay. So it's Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Okay, it's this book right here. And basically it's morning rituals. It's about it's 10-minute exercises, calls them savers. So silence is one, which is meditation, mindful meditation, which you can do on YouTube, or any of those other meditation apps. And then the A is for affirmations, V is for visualization, E is for exercise, R is for reading, and the last S is for scribing or journaling. Okay, I highly recommend you get the book and take a look at it, because what we need to do now, Kurt, is you need to start changing what you say to yourself, changing what you believe about yourself, start focusing on things, journaling a little bit about some of your experiences and why you feel the way you feel, and it doesn't matter how old you are, you're more mature than some of the other folks are on the call. But I've worked with people who are 70 years old, 75 years old, who were able to clear it up. It's just a matter of doing the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it does.
And so, if you want to, do something like that and kind of take a closer look at what's impeding you, you can get through that, and it will change your business and your life forever, But I appreciate your vulnerability, but you get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I find I just have to push through. It's that first door knock. It's that first phone call.
Right. And it's good that you
And
can.
once you get past that, you go, okay, I didn't die. So
Yeah, no
I can
bleeding.
do the next one.
Nobody's ever died, bled, lost hair, teeth, or skin prospecting. So, but in doing some of the work that we're talking about, you can make it so it doesn't come up anymore ever again. It never gets in the way.
Right.
But I would recommend the Miracle Morning and start working on that for sure. Okay.
Okay.
But good for you, man. I appreciate your vulnerability and for sharing. Thank you. So that's the whole thing, folks. It's a matter of just identifying that feeling when it comes up and letting it come up, and then letting it process and letting it move forward. I got triggered this morning a little bit. I was I went to my doctor's to get my blood drawn. I showed up at 7:50 for 8 o'clock blood drawn. 8 o'clock, next row of people goes in. 8:10, all people that came in after me went in. I'm like, huh? So I get up and I walk over. It's like 8:12. And I'm like, hey, did you let them know that I'm here to get my blood drawn? She goes, yeah, but your provider didn't submit the request yet. I'm like, I said I made this appointment a week ago. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, why didn't you tell me that when I sat down, So I got triggered for a moment, but I used to like make a big scene, what I'm saying? Like I let my feelings really get out of control, and I would yell and scream and insult. And I just kind of went like, let out the old side like that. And I just walked back and sat down and processed it and went away. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what you need to do, is get to the point where most of the time it doesn't bother you. And if it does bother you, you can process through it quickly. But it's available to everybody. And if you're in a position where you're a little overwhelmed, or you're feeling like you're kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit, mastering your emotions is going to change everything. And the best way to master your emotions is to do the things we talked about today. Anybody have any questions? No? It's not brain surgery, otherwise I wouldn't be able to teach it to you. But, if you're not doing the kind of business you want to do, if you're not getting the results you want, if there's something you can't identify, I don't know why I can't get on the phone. I don't know why I can't handle objections. I don't know why I don't like accountability. All that is just because of something that triggered you when you were younger. And it's still, around, and it's sitting there, in the attic of your mind. And if you go and find it and identify it and start working with it, it'll go away for good. All right. Any questions, any thoughts? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so if you could just explain a little bit more as far as how to identify or how to diagnose your thoughts, or what sort of things that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's here's the thing, and thanks for asking. I appreciate it, Jesus. But that's a lot of pressure, by the way, being named Jesus as a child. Like, that's tough, man. It's a lot to live up to. That's a lot to live up to.
Part of my trauma, man.
Okay, listen, it all happens, right? So, but here's it is, and here's the thing, like, and here's the thing, our parents aren't necessarily bad people. They just, in most cases, were not good parents because they didn't know what they needed to know, right? And, neuroscientist Chris Christensen, he calls it a generational trauma. It gets passed literally on your DNA from generation to generation. And if you go to a generation before ours, children, and maybe not so much yours, Jesus, maybe you're on the tail end of that, but certainly, for Kurt, maybe Russell, definitely for me, children were supposed to be seen and not heard. There was no such thing as alcoholism. There was no such thing as child abuse, right? There was no such thing as sex abuse. None of that shit existed. You know what I'm saying? And so my parents never told me not to touch anybody else's body or let anybody touch my body, And so, I was sexually abused when I was 10 and I didn't tell my mother until I was 30, So it can be bad. But basically, Jesus, it's in there. You just have to go ahead and say, hey, what is causing me to be, what is causing me to have anxiety? What is causing me call reluctance? What is causing me to be a perfectionist? What is causing me to be a procrastinator? Okay. And just put that on a couple different note cards and keep one with you and look at it during the day, put it on your nightstand, look at it before you go to bed. And then at night, when your subconscious does its job, which is basically to go ahead and process everything, it'll say, hey, Jesus, this is the time when, and it didn't even have to happen to you. I'm working with somebody right now who was an angelic child, but her brother was a complete screw up and her parents absolutely destroyed him. And she saw how bad things were when he screwed up. So she never wanted to make a mistake because she saw how bad it was. You see what I'm saying? Like, nobody tells us how to process feelings and emotions when we're kids for the most part. I mean, I do for my kids, but only because of what I've gone through, and, but when, if somebody were to say, hey, Zeus, you know what? Mom yelled at you and said all these things to you, but she really didn't mean that. You're still a great kid. She still loves you, and just realize that sometimes mom loses her stuff, but quite honestly, she didn't mean to hurt you. That would have changed everything, right? You know what I'm saying? But they didn't know to do that. And so that's why, things got messed up. So you just got to go and you got to identify the source, and then you got to do some mindfulness. Again, box breathing is great. You can find out about that in YouTube, sorry. Or you can go ahead and go to the mindful movement and get some videos to work on training your brain to do the work for it. Eventually it will go away. Okay. I'm gonna put my email address in here. Actually, this is my calendar link. If you guys want to grab some time, no cost, you want to talk a little more about this, go ahead and grab it. It's calendly.com/Coach Wally. If you want to talk about it, whether it's for you or for somebody else, go ahead and grab it. And then I'll be happy to talk to you. Like, no problem is too big to solve. Okay. You might need to go to a therapist over and above what you can do for yourself. You might need to take some medication if it's super severe, but at the end of the day, you can get through it. And as long as you're willing to work on it, you can make it go away. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah, if you want to talk, grab some time, let's chat. I appreciate you guys hopping on with me today. My time is up. You can always grab me. I'm on Facebook everywhere at Wally Bressler if you want to hit me up there or grab some time. But I appreciate you folks. You have a great weekend. Russell, really good to see you again, buddy. I'm glad you're doing well. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Be well. Thanks. Bye-bye.